Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Erika Mendez. I am the Senior Education Policy Analyst for the Latino Policy Forum. I'm going to go ahead and get started and share my screen. Roberto, can you give me hosting?
Done.
Perfect. We are really excited to be here with you all today. We are going to be talking about preparing the educators of tomorrow as part of the Latino Unity Day program for 2021. With us, we have Caroline Sanchez-Crozier, who represents LULAC, Illinois, Latinx Leaders Now, and has her CSC consulting group. I will also be presenting Erika Mendez with the Latino Policy Forum. You will also see Rosario Hernandez, who's going to be interacting with everyone in the Q&A chat box and could be assistance if you are having technical difficulties. She is our Rockstar Education Policy Associate. And on the call also we have Roberto Valdez, who is a event administrator for Latino Unity Day programming. So thank you to him for a lot of the coordination behind the scenes. Today we're going to have quite a bit of a full agenda to talk about how we prepare the educators of tomorrow. We'll do some light context setting, an overview of the different advocacy opportunities that are available in order to, I think, begin to make some progress towards a high quality workforce for the diverse children of Illinois, specifically Latino and English learners. We'll talk about some pre-service efforts that are happening in the General Assembly this session. And then Caroline is going to talk a little bit about efforts to upskill and support the current workforce. And then we'll end the session today with some advocacy opportunities that you all can engage in the coming days or weeks as you finish Latino Unity Day and some additional resources. We'll leave some time at the end to address any questions that are in the Q&A chat box and gauge some general reactions from the group and some of the advocacy opportunities that are presented. I do want to start off with some brief context setting in terms of how Illinois fares currently. What we know is that Latino students make up about 26% of our entire state student population. However, Latino teacher representation has not kept pace. At the bar chart to the right, we see that there are tremendous gaps, specifically between Black and Latino students and the teachers available to serve them. We also know that Latino student population growth has grown 19% from 2010 to 2020. What we've noticed in that 10-year span is that while population growth in our student body is driven by Latino students, we've seen a decline in the population of white and Black students by 14% and 16% respectively. We also know that the role of language exacerbates the shortage. It's not just a matter of having more representation of Latino teachers, but Latino teachers who can support native language and English language development. And we know that a huge chunk of the English learners in the state are Spanish-speaking Latinos, about 76%. So we have a huge responsibility to really make sure that we're elevating teachers who do have these bilingual skills and can apply them to the classroom. Data also shows us that the state needs about 1,000 more educators that are Latino and bilingual in order to meet the growing need. This is based off of current vacancies that are experienced in the state, but also projected need for teacher over the next few years. And as a little bit more context, we also know that Illinois not only has to attract more teachers into the profession, but needs to better support Latino and bilingual teachers who are currently in the field. We know that 25% of teachers who are in front of our English learners are not fully licensed and need to obtain a bilingual endorsement. This could likely be that they're on a alternative professional educator license, a type 29, and are provisionally serving in schools while obtaining their bilingual endorsement. And so there needs to be more investment and supports to kind of get them to and through programs. We also know that research tells us that high quality bilingual teachers are the single most important factor for English learner success. However, we are challenged by burnout that is common for teachers of color, specifically bilingual educators, because they have higher workloads and responsibilities. They're often doing translation in schools, providing support to core teachers who are doing general education. They have to administer testing more often than other educators in a school building, often are fielded with questions around a parent's immigration status or help with navigating social safety net programs. And so we know that it's not just the responsibility of teaching the students, but all of the different additional supports that bilingual educators provide our students and families. And data from the State Board of Education also shows us that early career retention is by far lowest for bilingual instruction at about 45%. Most people report leaving due to working conditions. So because of these like different factors kind of contributing to this overall shortage, we want to focus our conversation today on efforts that are going to prepare tomorrow's teachers while also supporting upskilling the current teachers who are in the field. So we're going to divide our presentation into two different subset of opportunities. The first being advocacy for pre-service teachers, and we'll talk through some different vehicles that are moving this session that are meant to kind of inch towards this goal. And then Caroline is going to talk about upskilling the current workforce through different trainings, professional development opportunities, and other existing resources that can really help support the teachers that are currently in the field. So first, we're going to talk through the Minority Teacher of Illinois Scholarship Program, MTI, that's administered by the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. In the program's current structure, the scholarship is available to minority candidates who are Black, Latino, Asian, or Native American who are pursuing becoming a teacher. Historically, this program is usually accessed once a candidate has entered an educator preparation program. But what we're trying to do is more intensive outreach so that this does become more readily available and accessed before people become educator preparations, even as early as soon as they graduate from high school and are enrolled in higher education. Currently, the scholarship amount is $5,000 per candidate for up to 8 semesters, which typically rounds up to about 4 years of scholarship support. And some of the teaching commitments for every year that the scholarship program is accessed, a candidate must fulfill a 1-year teaching commitment, which could be, it could be filled at a school, it could be filled at a preschool program, as long as 30% of the students served in that school or program identify as Black, Latinx, Asian, or Native American. And currently, because of the shortage of minority males in the field, they have a targeted scholarship or a targeted set aside of the scholarship program for minority males. So it's a very cool program. We've been working with partners this last year to see how can we leverage this existing program and make it more targeted to fill the needs that we have in the field today. So we are working with members of our General Assembly, Latino Caucus as a champion for some of this issue, and earlier on the Black Caucus included some of this work in their omnibus bill. But essentially, we're trying to get a $4.2 million increase to the scholarship program this session so that we increase scholarship caps from $5,000 to $7,500 per candidate. We wanted to make sure that with the rising cost of tuition, there are scholarship amounts that are also being revisited in order to ensure that candidates are supported financially as they do pursue teaching. And as we mentioned, bilingual educators it's probably the most difficult position to fill and really hard to retain teachers. And so we wanted this program to also be very targeted and intentional on how we expand funding for bilingual teacher candidates of color. So there will be a 30% set aside for any minority candidate pursuing bicultural education in the event that this $4.2 million are invested. The next advocacy opportunity for pre-service teachers is legislation championed by the Latino caucus's very own Senator Pacione-Zayas. The senator has extensive experience, birth and early childhood, but also was a vice president of policy for Erickson Institute, which is a higher ed institution. She is working with partners at Illinois Action for Children and the Community College Board on Senate Bill 1832 to create additional pathways to earn degrees through community colleges. As we know, Black and Latinx teachers are underrepresented in these positions, especially when you require higher forms of education, such as an educator license or a bachelor's degree. Community colleges have historically been anchors in the community for students of color and often attracts students of color, immigrants, first generation students, and so on, and provide a number of wraparound supports that really ensure a candidate's success through those programs, whether it's a formalized education program or trade. And what this legislation would do would expand access to bachelor's degrees by authorizing community colleges to offer an early childhood bachelor's degree and an educator license. Currently, community colleges are only able to confer associate degrees. This would create a bit of an expansion given the demand in early childhood for community colleges to be more responsive and upskill the teachers who may be at lower levels of credential in the fields, like teacher assistants, paraprofessionals, to access some of this coursework at community colleges and able to obtain their bachelor's degree or an educator license. Any community colleges that are interested in creating a program like this must meet criteria and approval by the Higher Learning Council, the State Board of Education, and the Illinois Community College Board, just to ensure the quality of the programming is comparable to a degree that a four-year institution might confer. We want to make sure that there is coherence across the board. So these are some of the provisions that are in the legislation. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Caroline, who's going to talk about some other efforts to upskill and support the workforce that's in the field. And then we'll briefly move towards different advocacy opportunities for each of these pillars.
Hi, Erica. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to share that the work of LULAC has been extensive. Of course, all of you know it's the oldest and largest civil rights organization in the country, and we have chapters in every state, as well as local councils. Our work has been quite extensive in the last, I would say, decade, with particular Council for Education 5038, where we really advocate and represent the interests and the needs for educators to serve our students, not only English learners, but Latinos as well. And the big area that we really feel is a strong need to continue to evolve as far as the professional development for our educators, whether it be for bilingual education, which we've always had that support, but expanded over time. Now, digital literacy, computer science, other areas that have really been important to really elevate the roles of their teachers. We highlight models of best practices. We collaborate with other organizations. I'll go briefly into the Center IRC, which many of you already know. We really look at the curriculum as well. We know many states have a lot of integration, not many, I would say too few, where the culture and language and history is part of their curriculum, and that's still not happening in Illinois. We're grateful that this year we have the new curriculum that was adapted for the to incorporate cultural responsiveness into the standards. So we will be looking to see how that's going to roll out, both in the university level with the pre-teaching and in servicing teachers. We build alliances. We are an advocacy organization. We're our volunteers, so we have to do our work. We really need to partner and build alliances with other organizations. In the past Latino Unity Day, we've been presenting the work of a coalition that we established about 2018, the Illinois Latino Coalition of Education Leaders. And I won't go to each one, but you can see the acronyms for each. They all have their own professional development, from higher ed to bilingual to those that focus in Chicago. That's there are websites to all of them. I will share my link at the end if you wanted to know more information. As an example of a great organization for 45 years has been there to support our teachers statewide, is the center, Illinois Resource Center. They provide early childhood, special education, and teachers that serve ELs for over 45 years. What we're doing uniquely with them is that we're in another chapter for myself, as 33 years being in technology, is the founder of CSD Consulting Group. I've recently launched a nonprofit that is called Latinx Digital Leaders Now, and we're forming alliances with organizations like the Center, who have so much as far as what they've provided, and now we want to work and elevate the teachers to a digital in the digital world, because we all found out at the pandemic it's no longer a maybe, or if we have a time or if we have funding, it's a must, it's essential. So if we go to the next slide, I'll share some of the specific things that we're doing in that new area of growth. Thank you. So what we've been doing for, like I said, many years in my own work in my profession and my business for 33 years is working with schools across the state and others. And what I see consistently is the gaps, the not always having Latino educators or those that serve English learners at the table, whether it be for funding, whether it be for professional development, whether it be for dialogue. And what we're doing specifically with our council and now this new nonprofit, Latinx Digital Leaders Now, is to really look at all the funding streams that are coming out with this new administration. And one in particular that I'm very working very closely with is the issue around digital equity, not only from the end result of uses and ways for teachers to teach their students with new best practices. We know that the parents became teachers overnight. So we learned of lack of access, lack of connectivity, lack of utilization. So what we're advocating is that beyond us growing the pipe across the state and the rural areas and in the under-resourced communities, that we have to do a holistic approach. So that's where we are working with other organizations. So besides LULAC and my hat at the state, I'm also the chair for LULAC education at the national level, making sure that the funding coming from the feds that are in the billions and even the trillions for infrastructure and technology and all the other areas ultimately end up as a benefit to our students and to our educators, our families. So one of those areas of growth for our collaboration is connecting with what is happening in education with technology. If we're going to reach students, we have to reach educators. So another hat I wear is I am on the board of CS4IL, and CS4IL is a nonprofit that is dedicated to the achieving of equitable, world-class K-12 computer science education for every student, every school, and throughout Illinois. And that's where I'm finding out that we're not always at the table, and we find out that it's a zip code issue of who has those upskill training and to incorporate into the classroom and who doesn't. So we're currently on discussions with the legislators in the appropriations committee around the new standards, the computer science standards that were just approved, that will go into effect in a couple of years. But we find out that there's no funding, there's no plan for professional development. And what we're looking to see is that the Computer Science for Illinois, it gets that support and those funding streams so we can, across the board, reach all of our communities. So anyone that is interested in either the Computer Science for Illinois, the Latinx Teachers Leaders Now, or the work we're doing with the center and IRC in, collaborating and ensuring that teachers have opportunities for integrating coding into the bilingual classroom, into social studies and other content areas. That's really the innovation that is happening and the need for advocacy. We go through our council, through our other organizations. So with that, I want to also, share, thank Sylvia Rogel, who've been recently collaborating on the evolution of their workshops and that they're doing both virtually and on site that really address this very important area of a digital space so that we can, better serve our students and have a better life and in the workplace and really are able to function moving forward, because the pandemic may be dying down, you'll never go away, and we're never going to leave the remote as an option. So that's what I'm here to share and invite you to join us in this evolution of upskilling our educators.
Thanks, Caroline. We are going to move to the next section of this webinar, which just are updates and some opportunities for additional advocacy. For some of the pre-service initiatives that we mentioned, Minority Teachers of Illinois Scholarship being one of them, there isn't an immediate advocacy opportunity that can be done besides just reaching out to a local elected officials, and in some of the follow-up materials we'll send fact sheets. But we had a subject matter hearing last week with practitioners and members of the field, really extending kind of asking the General Assembly to extend an olive branch for MTI with the $4.2 million investment. It seems like something that lawmakers are open to, because a lot of the requests that they've been receiving have been in the amounts of 30 million or 50 million. And in the grander scheme of things, 4.2 might not seem as big as a lift, but could be really impactful for the field. So if you are interested in engaging in some of the Minority Teacher of Illinois scholarship program advocacy, drop your email in the chat box, and once an opportunity presents itself, we can send out alerts, action alerts, so that you are able to kind of join partners in kind of moving some of this through some of the budget conversations. There is an immediate advocacy opportunity for the Community College BA outlined in Senate Bill 1832 by Senator Pacione-Zayas. You could join a coalition of community members and advocates who are really trying to raise awareness around what this legislation could mean for the field by contacting Maria Estelin or Liz Brown Reeves. We'll also attach a fact sheet to the follow-up materials. You could engage on Twitter by thanking Senator Pacione-Zayas for her advocacy on this matter and tagging your own elected officials so that they know that you are supportive of some of this work. A template tweet could be, thank you to at Pacione-Zayas for her advocacy to expand pathways to college with Senate Bill 1832. We need more community college early childhood BAs. Or you could join Action for Children's advocacy website around the Community College BA, where you will find a video of their live press conference with Senator Pacione-Zayas, the fact sheet, research on where this has been done in other states and how successful it's been, and even some prompts in case you do need talking points for how you engage with elected officials on this subject. And then there are additional resources that Caroline will provide overview for some of the efforts LULAC and partners have been leading. Caroline? I think she may have stepped away from her computer, but I do know, oh, there you go.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm here. I was just saying that I put on the on chat my email for information, info@latinxdln.org. There are really multitude of opportunities to engage. One is purely on the, broadband equity that is happening with a lot of dollars to really reach out our communities. There's a coalition that was established recently by the state with the Office of Broadband Equity. So again, if you send me information on what particular interest you have at info@latinxdln.org. Join our council. We have 68 members, of which across the state that are either educators, advocates, and so forth, either in working in committees with Advanced Illinois, where now we're working on the educator pipeline coalition, as well as the higher ed equity. And we're also looking at the new changes that are coming about with the computer science standards and the culture responsive standards. So we welcome your involvement. This event is just a one time to announce and come together, but what we do is we work throughout the year. And I think working together in unity is the best way to achieve our goals and share resources. So again, we look forward to hearing from you. And thank you, Erica, for the invitation.
Thank you, Carolyn. And we did want the last 15 minutes to hear from all of you in the chat box. We know that the efforts that we've talked about today is not an exhaustive list of efforts underway to really amplify the need for a high quality teacher workforce, both in how we support our current educators who even before the pandemic, were navigating really difficult responsibilities and workloads. And now with the pandemic, we know that that's been exacerbated. So really thankful for some of the efforts to support those teachers. And we know that there are other efforts to expand pipelines and attract new professionals to the teacher workforce. So we wanted to hear from all of you around questions that you had around some of the efforts that we've discussed today, but possibly even elevate other initiatives or proposals that could help us kind of inch towards our goal a little bit closer.
So Erica, I have a question that I believe hasn't been answered from Jennifer. The question is LPF, Latino Policy Forum, tracking how many school districts are applying to dual language learning programs? If so, do we see any growth? Are some of these teachers included in the data involved in those programs or exclusively in the ELL classes? Not sure if we can answer that or not.
Yeah, we do have a sense of some of the dual language programs in the state, but there hasn't been, I think, a consistent report developed by the State Board of Education on English learners in the state. I'm sure a handful of you can recall a few years ago, they would put out annual reports around English learners and languages that are spoken, where we are in terms of supply and demand for educators, and even the types of programs available in the state. I think part of the advocacy that we've been doing is how we can consistently receive that data on a year-to-year basis. But we have been working on another end around program quality with some of our research partnerships with the University of Chicago. While some of the data doesn't necessarily get at whether a program is providing, a transitional bilingual program, a dual language program, or even TPI. We are able to see that access to just language support could, like ELs who receive access to English language support, regardless of program type, perform better or at par with their partners, even as they become former English learners. And we'd be happy to drop the link to some of that work in the chat box. There is also a report that we put out about a year and a half ago that kind of talks about bilingual programs in the state and how the shortage might be affecting ability to fill vacancies and program quality. That can also be found in the linked, the link that's going to be going in the chat box in a few minutes for additional resources. Oh, Mireya, thank you. We will definitely send that presentation. Thank you for your work in the Western suburbs.
I'd like to respond to Luis' question about priorities, Luis Narvaez, priorities that maybe there's overlap with the Black Caucus. I know that they've been doing a lot of work and dialogue around the the computer science standards, and recently there's a new initiative by the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, particularly in connection with the University of Illinois in Champaign. So LULAC was invited to be part of that, and we definitely need more engagement from our Latino leaders, because the Black Caucus and other leadership across the state is at the table. And this project called REASON, REASON, stands for something I will not go into this at this moment, but it will involve mentoring students that are high school students. It will involve really ensuring that there's more supports around the new legislation that was passed. So the Black Caucus is very engaged, and I don't see other engagement from Latino legislators. I'd like to see how that could happen. But Luis, if you want to be a part of it, you are already a LULAC member. We are having a launch meetings with the leadership of the University of Illinois Champaign, with the Black Caucus attending and LULAC attending, and anyone else would like to let me know, and I can make those connections.
I'll also add the Black Caucus, I think, started really important work earlier this year that has kind of paved the way for raising issues of racial equity. And I'm happy to say that the Latino Caucus has over time been more involved in some of these efforts in supporting the Black Caucus work. Really early on, they kind of led some of the work for Minority Teachers of Illinois Scholarship Program, and including some of the really important changes to include some of the provisions to specialize the program for bilingual, to prioritize Black males within the minority males set aside program, and to increase the scholarship amount from $5,000 to $7,500. And it's really been, I think, nice to see the Latino Caucus partner in that work to now do some of the advocacy around the budget increase that is so critical for both increasing the scholarship amount and creating the set aside for bilingual. I also know that within the Black Caucus omnibus bill, they included a lot of education provisions specialized to early childhood education. That is an area of work that the forum engages in, but unfortunately wasn't enough time to include that in this presentation. We are going to outline a number of budget asks and attach it to the fact sheets in the follow-up that really support some of the work that the Black Caucus laid out, specifically around compensation parity for early childhood workers in the profession, and increases to the different program areas, because the Black Caucus in their work endorsed the governor's funding commission recommendations, which was just a group to say, how do we want to reimagine early childhood programs, and what could this cost for our state? And the price tag was pretty lofty. So what the fact sheet is going to outline are investments that we need to make year in and year out to achieve this vision of equity for early childhood. And the Black Caucus has really been instrumental in, I think, elevating that work through their efforts earlier this year, and as an ongoing effort, because many of their members have been heavily engaged on it. So if that is something that interests you, I would love to chat offline, and we can send a fact sheet for additional follow-up for those interested.
Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Caroline. Any other questions from folks? I'm looking at the chats and the Q&A function. Don't see any. Give it a few minutes. We have about 6 minutes. Let's see here. Sylvia mentions here, male teachers in elementary grades are a rarity. I'd like to see more support to funnel males here. Male role models need not start in the later years.
Mm-hmm. That's a really important point, Sylvia. The effort that we talked about at first for the Minority Teachers Program has a set aside for minority males, not just for Black males, but Latino, Asian, Native American males can also access this. And that's a double bonus if they're bilingual. because then they have more chances of getting the scholarship because they'd meet a number of different criteria buckets. So I think just as important as getting the money, it's the outreach and the dissemination that this opportunity exists, so that our candidates who are interested in being in the profession know that they have this available to them. It serves us no good to increase the scholarship amount if nobody knows that it's available to them. So that is something that we'll probably engage in after this session, if the money does get appropriated, is asking partners to help us in some of the implementation and outreach to make sure that those funding opportunities are known.
Go ahead, Carla.
I'd like to touch something, follow up on Erica said earlier about all the supports that all teachers need, but especially bilingual teachers that end up doing double, triple duty. Oftentimes, the other group of teachers that may or may not be bilingual are just Latinos in general, Latinas, Latino teachers. And what I hear is LULAC and our members is that many feel isolated when they start getting when they want to expand their horizons in the profession and go outside of Chicago and the suburbs, even in the downstate or central state. And there's still the majority of teachers in many communities or school districts are Caucasian, they're white. And there's a lack of really feeling supported by their peers. So we talk so much about the students, but we should not forget about our teachers. This year with the pandemic, with the stresses they have to face with their own families, many chose to leave their profession to take care of their kids. Others, just had a lot of challenges to keep that going, and just not only the growth of educators is important, but the retention and what supports exist for those to address mental health, address microaggressions. There's so much that is happening that people don't openly talk about. They feel that it may look bad on them to so-called complain, but really it's real and it's out there. And I think with the Black Lives Matter and these issues of racism, we need to bring that out and have open conversations. And I think LULAC is very open. I mean, we're a civil rights organization. That's what we stand for. So to have a safe space where we can talk about that, and I feel like we're going to lose our job or we're going to be looked down upon, because it's real, and unless we allow that openness and conversation, we're really hurting our teachers who are there to do the best for our kids. So I just wanted to bring that out. If anybody wants to be a part of that, we definitely at LULAC are really hearing those voices.
All great points, Caroline. Thank you for bringing those up. We have time for one more question, and Blade 2T asks, I really hope that's the real name, Blade 2T. How do you think the kids' scholarship tax credit charge affects the future of Latino teachers? And whoever wants to take that first.
I will say that's not something we're as familiar with in our advocacy, as I think the scope of our portfolio is a little narrower. What we are doing, though, is we're looking at some of the different federal funding that's been available and the different initiatives within the federal funding proposals to see how the state can leverage it. We don't work as much with tax credit, but I know that's been heavily talked about in some of the federal proposals. But there are probably other efforts that can significantly impact, I think, the education of Latino children. And what we'll try to do is, I think there are other partners who have done some of the analysis at the federal level around what the tax credits could mean. And we could try to share some of that information with all of you. I did also see, before we're up for time, questions around how people can apply for the funds.
Please.
For Minority Teachers of Illinois Scholarship Program, you can go to the Illinois Student Assistance Commission website, and they'll have all of the scholarship programs listed there. There's an online link for it. In the follow-up materials with the one-pager, we'll make sure that that link is included on there.
So we are almost at time.